Welcome back to Voice of Compassion. We spend our lives chasing things. We believe that if we just had more money, more success, or more power, we would finally be happy. But is happiness something we can acquire, or is it something entirely different? Today on Voice of Compassion, we enter a grand palace where a king has everything but feels empty inside. Desperate for a cure, he sends his soldiers to find the shirt of a truly happy man, believing that wearing it will heal his sadness. What they find at the end of their journey is not a magic garment, but a truth that changes everything. Open your heart and let's listen to the story of The King and the Beggar. Story 15, The King and the Beggar. Part 1, The King's Sadness plus the Search begins. Once upon a time, in a kingdom of wide rivers and soft green hills, there stood a palace on a high stone hill. From far away, the palace looked like a dream. Its roofs were covered with shining tiles that caught the sun. Its gates were tall and carved with lions and flowers. Its walls were painted in warm colors, gold, red, and deep blue. Inside, there were long halls with smooth marble floors. There were curtains made of silk. There were rooms filled with rare perfumes. There were gardens where fountains sang all day and night. The king who lived there had everything. He had gold, he had jewels, he had servants who rushed to his smallest wish. He had chefs who cooked meals that tasted like heaven. He had musicians who played soft music at sunset. He had soldiers to protect him. He had doctors to keep him safe. And yet, the king was not happy, not even a little. His name was King Arun. He was not cruel. He did not enjoy hurting people. In fact, he often tried to be fair, but inside his chest, something felt empty. Some mornings, he woke up with a heavy stone feeling in his stomach. Some nights, he lay in his soft bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. The palace was beautiful, but it felt cold. The gold did not warm him. The silk did not comfort him. The music did not reach the place where his sadness lived. His servants noticed. They walked more quietly around him. They avoided his eyes. They whispered in corners. The king is unwell, they said, but no doctor can find the illness, because it was not an illness of the body. It was an illness of the heart. One evening, rain fell gently on the palace roof. The sound was soft, like fingers tapping on a drum. King Arun sat alone in a wide hall. A fire burned in the fireplace, but the warmth did not enter him. He looked at a table covered in food. He was not hungry. He looked at a group of dancers waiting for him. He waved them away. He looked at a chest of jewels. He felt nothing. At last he put his head in his hands. "I have everything," he whispered. "So why do I feel like I have nothing?" That night, the king called his oldest advisor. The advisor was a wise man named Suman. Suman had white hair and calm eyes. He had served the king's family for many years. He was honest, even when truth was uncomfortable. Suman entered the hall and bowed. "You called for me, your majesty?" he said. The king looked up. His eyes were tired. "Suman," he said softly, "tell me the truth. What is wrong with me?" Suman watched the king closely. Then he spoke gently. "You have many things," Suman said, "but your heart is not at rest." The king laughed quietly, without joy. "Yes," the king said, "my heart is not at rest. How do I fix it?" Suman paused. He seemed to choose his words carefully, like choosing a path through fog. "There is an old story," Suman said. "An old cure." The king leaned forward slightly. "A cure?" he asked. Suman nodded. "They say," he began, "that if a sad king wears the shirt of a truly happy man, his sadness will leave him." The king blinked. "The shirt?" he repeated. Suman bowed his head. "It may sound like a fable," he said, "but fables sometimes carry truth in strange clothing." The king sat still. His mind, tired of sadness, reached for hope, even if it was thin. "Then find this happy man," the king said. "Bring me his shirt." Suman bowed. "Yes, your majesty." The quest begins. The next morning, the palace stirred like a hive. The king called his strongest soldiers, not for war, but for a search. He chose 3. Captain Rana, brave, serious, loyal. Lieutenant Mira, sharp-eyed, quick-minded. And Sergeant Om, quiet, strong, practical. They stood in the courtyard with their horses ready. The advisor, Suman, spoke to them. "You must find a man who is truly happy," he said, "not smiling for money, not pretending. A man whose heart is peaceful." Captain Rana asked, "Where do we begin?" Suman gestured toward the wide kingdom beyond the palace walls. "Everywhere," he said. Lieutenant Mira frowned. "How will we know?" she asked. "People can lie." Suman nodded. "Yes," he said, "so you must look closely. Not only at their words, but at their eyes." Sergeant Om spoke quietly. "And when we find him?" he asked. Suman's voice remained calm. "Bring his shirt," he said. The soldiers exchanged looks. It sounded simple, but something in it felt difficult. Still, they bowed and mounted their horses. Hooves struck the stone path. Dust rose in the morning sun, and the search began. The first stops, wealth with worries. They rode to the richest part of the kingdom first. If anyone is happy, they thought, it must be the rich. They visited a great merchant whose house was larger than some temples. The merchant welcomed them with a wide smile. His table overflowed with food. His clothes were fine. His hands wore rings. Captain Rana asked directly, "Sir, are you happy?" The merchant laughed. "Of course," he said loudly. "I have everything." But when the soldiers looked closer, they saw the merchant's eyes. Restless, tired, always counting. Lieutenant Mira asked softly, "Do you sleep well at night?" The merchant's smile weakened. He looked away. "Not always," he admitted. "I worry about thieves. I worry about losing my fortune. I worry about my rivals." Captain Rana nodded slowly. Not truly happy, he thought. They left. They visited a powerful general. The general's home was guarded. His walls were strong. His reputation was feared. The general spoke with confidence. "I am respected," he said. "I am strong. I have honor." Captain Rana asked, "Are you happy?" The general paused. For one breath, his face tightened. Then he forced a smile. "Yes," he said. But Sergeant Om noticed his hand shaking slightly when he poured tea. Lieutenant Mira asked, "What do you fear?" The general's jaw clenched. "Nothing," he said quickly, but his eyes told a different story. He feared losing power. He feared being replaced. He feared the next war. They left again. They visited a famous poet. The poet smiled and spoke of beauty, but his heart was lonely. They visited a priest. The priest spoke of heaven, but he feared hell. Everywhere they went, they found the same thing. Smiles, with worry underneath. Laughter, with tension inside. Comfort, with fear hiding behind it. As the sun began to set, the soldiers stopped at a small inn. They sat quietly, tired. Captain Rana rubbed his forehead. "This is harder than battle," he said. Lieutenant Mira sighed. "People have masks," she said, "and even they believe their own masks." Sergeant Om looked at the road outside. "Maybe true happiness is rare," he said. The sky turned orange, and somewhere far away, in the palace, the king waited. Still sad, still hoping, and the search had only just begun. Story 15, The King and the Beggar. Part 2, The Desperate Search, The Happy Man, The Shirtless Truth, Reflection. The search grows long. Days turned into weeks. The soldiers rode across the kingdom until their horses' backs were tired and their own bodies ached. They crossed wide fields where wheat moved like waves. They passed villages where children ran barefoot and laughed. They climbed rocky roads where the wind pushed hard against their faces. And everywhere they went, they asked the same question. "Are you truly happy?" Sometimes people answered quickly. "Yes, yes," they said, smiling too wide. Sometimes people answered proudly. "Of course I am," they said. "Look at my house. Look at my title. Look at my family." But Lieutenant Mira learned to watch their eyes. Captain Rana learned to listen to the pauses between words. Sergeant Om learned to notice the hands. Hands reveal what mouths hide. They met many people who looked happy. A rich merchant with a warm wife and bright carpets. But he feared sickness. He feared loss. He feared his own aging. A powerful official with a strong voice and a high chair. But he feared whispers behind his back. He feared one mistake. He feared falling from respect. A young bride in a beautiful home. But she feared being left. She feared not being enough. She feared the quiet anger of her husband, a farmer with a good harvest. But he feared drought next year. He feared storms. He feared hunger returning. It was as if every life carried a hidden trembling, like a candle that looks steady until you notice the wind. At night, the soldiers sat by small fires and spoke in low voices. Captain Rana stared into the flames. "Everyone wants something," he said, "and because of that, no one rests." Lieutenant Mira nodded. "I used to think happiness was a thing people owned," she said, "like land, like gold. But it seems happiness is more like a sky. If your mind is full of clouds, you cannot see it." Sergeant Om was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe the happy man is not important. Maybe the shirt is the point." Captain Rana looked at him. "What do you mean?" he asked. Om shrugged slowly. "I don't know," he said, "but this search feels like a mirror. It shows us how everyone is trapped." They fell silent. The next morning, they continued, because the king still waited, and the king's sadness still filled the palace like cold fog. The king's patience breaks. Back in the palace, King Aaron paced the long halls. He grew thinner. His eyes grew darker. One night he shouted, voice breaking, "Why can't you find him? Is there no happy man in my kingdom?" Advisor Suman bowed calmly. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "the search is still happening." The king's shoulders fell. "I have everything," he whispered, "but I cannot find happiness even once." Suman looked at him with kindness. "Sometimes," he said softly, "we search in the wrong places first." The king said nothing. His heart was too tired to argue. The final day. One afternoon, near the edge of the kingdom, the soldiers rode into a poorer region. The road was dusty. The houses were small. The fields were rough. The sky was open and wide. There were no great mansions here, no high walls, no guards. The soldiers felt their hope grow weaker. Captain Rana sighed. "If the rich are not happy," he said, "how could we find happiness here?" Lieutenant Mira answered quietly. "I don't know," she said, "but maybe we have been looking at the wrong kind of life." They rode past a small village. Near the edge of it, beside a simple field, they heard something, a sound that did not match the tired world. Singing. A man's voice. Not a trained palace singer. A simple voice. But it carried light. It was not loud. It was not perfect. It was honest. The soldiers stopped their horses. The song floated through the air like warm bread smell. They followed the sound and found a man sitting by a small fire. He wore old trousers. His feet were bare. His hair was messy. His skin was dark from sun. Beside him was a small pot of soup, a few onions, a piece of bread, nothing more. And yet, the man was smiling. Not the kind of smile that sells something. A real smile. His eyes were soft. His shoulders were loose. His laughter came easily between lines of song, like he was amused by life itself. Sergeant Om stared. He whispered, "Is this him?" Lieutenant Mira watched closely. No hidden tension. No restless eyes. No tight hands. Just presence. Captain Rana dismounted and stepped forward. "Good ma'am," Captain Rana said respectfully. "May we ask you a question?" The man looked up. His smile stayed. "Of course," he said. "What do you need?" Captain Rana took a careful breath. "Are you happy?" he asked. The poor man blinked, surprised. Then he laughed. "Happy?" he said. "Yes, I think so." Lieutenant Mira leaned forward slightly. "Truly happy?" she asked softly. "Even when life is hard?" The man stirred his soup slowly. He looked at the sky, then at the fire, then back at them. "I have food for today," he said. "I have breath in my chest. I have the sun when it comes and shade when it goes. I have this soup, and I have my song." He smiled again. "What more should I need to be happy?" The soldiers exchanged looks. Captain Rana felt his heart lift. This is it, he thought. This is the happy man. He bowed. "Please," Captain Rana said, "our king is very sad. We were told that if he wears the shirt of a truly happy man, his sadness will leave him. We have searched everywhere. We believe you are the one." The poor man listened quietly, still smiling. When Captain Rana finished, the poor man nodded. "Ah," he said softly, "so that is why you look tired." Lieutenant Mira stepped forward. "Would you give us your shirt?" she asked gently. "We will pay you, We will reward you." The poor man laughed again, warm, not mocking. "My shirt," he repeated. Captain Rana nodded. "Yes," he said, "just your shirt. For the king. The climax. The shirtless truth." The poor man reached down and touched his chest. Then he paused. His smile softened into something almost tender. He looked at the soldiers with kind eyes. Then he spread his hands slightly, as if showing an empty bowl. "I don't have a shirt," he said. The soldiers froze. For a moment, the world stood still. Lieutenant Mira blinked, as if she misheard. "No shirt?" she whispered. Sergeant Om's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Captain Rana stared, shocked, not because of the poverty, but because of the meaning. The poor man sat calmly by his fire. The flames danced. The soup steamed. His chest was bare under an old scarf that barely covered him, and yet he sat like a king of peace. Captain Rana's throat tightened. "So," he whispered, "the happy man has no shirt." The poor man nodded gently. "No shirt," he said, "and no fear about it." He pointed to the soup pot. "I eat," he said. "I sleep. I wake. I work when there is work. I rest when there is rest." He looked up at the sky again. "And I do not chase tomorrow like a dog chasing its tail," he said. "I meet today." The soldiers stood, silent, not disappointed now, not angry, only awake, because the story was not a joke. It was a clean blade cutting through illusion. The shirt was never the cure. The cure was seeing the truth. Happiness is not something you wear, not something you own, not something you can take from another person. True happiness is the freedom from wanting. Captain Rana bowed deeply, humbled. "We understand," he whispered. The poor man smiled kindly. "Tell your king," he said, "that if he wants the shirt of a happy man, he must look for happiness where it truly lives." Lieutenant Mira asked softly, "Where is that?" The poor man touched his chest lightly. "Here," he said. "When the heart stops fighting the moment, return to the palace." The soldiers returned to the palace without a shirt. They carried no cloth, no magic cure, only a quiet truth. King Aaron waited in the cold, golden hall. When he saw them return empty-handed, his face darkened with despair. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Where is the shirt?" Captain Rana stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty," he said, "we found the happy man." The king's eyes widened with hope. "And his shirt?" the king asked quickly. Lieutenant Mira lifted her gaze. "He had no shirt," she said softly. The king froze. "What?" he whispered. Sergeant Om spoke, calm and steady. "Your Majesty," he said, "the truly happy man owned almost nothing. And because of that, nothing owned him." The king's hands trembled. He wanted to be angry, but something in their faces stopped him. They were not mocking him. They looked changed. Advisor Suman stepped closer, as if he already understood. The king's voice became small. "Then there is no cure," he whispered. Suman's eyes were gentle. "No," he said softly. "There is a cure. But it cannot be borrowed. It must be grown." The king looked down. The hall felt quieter than ever, and in that silence, a painful truth finally entered him. He had collected everything except peace. He had dressed himself in gold, and yet he was still naked inside. Tears rose in his eyes. Not dramatic tears, human tears. He whispered, "What do I do?" Advisor Suman answered simply. "Begin with less," he said. "Less wanting, less clinging, less fear." He gestured toward the open window, where evening light touched the palace. "Let the palace be beautiful," he said, "but do not ask it to fill your heart." The king took a slow breath. For the first time in a long time, he did not demand a quick answer. He only listened. Reflection. And now, dear listener, this story feels like a bedtime story, but it speaks to adults very deeply, because many of us are like the king. We think, when I have that, then I will be happy. More money, more comfort, more success, more approval. But wanting is a cup with a hole. You can pour and still feel empty. And sometimes, the truly happy person is not the one with the most, but the one who needs the least. Not because poverty is better, but because freedom is light. Freedom is quiet. Freedom is being able to sit by a small fire and sing. So tonight, If your heart feels restless, try one gentle question. What do I keep chasing? And what would happen if I let it go? Happiness is not a shirt. It is not something outside you. It is a state of being, a heart that can rest, because it is no longer fighting life. Rest now. You do not need to wear happiness. You only need to return to peace. The end. And so the soldiers returned, empty-handed, but with hearts full of wisdom. The king learnt that happiness is not a shirt you can wear, nor a possession you can buy. It is a state of being, a freedom from wanting what you do not have. The happy man had no shirt, yet he had everything, because his heart was at peace with the present moment. Thank you for finding joy with Voice of Compassion. If this story helped you see happiness in a new light today, please share it with someone who might be searching. May your heart be full, even if your hands are empty. Goodbye.